This is going to be Federalist 27, Part 1. Hamilton here talks about domestic tranquility and the fact that because this union is going to be larger and the elections will take place in larger districts, the people who are going to be representing you are going to be more competent, and they will understand people's issues and they will try to solve it better. Plus, he tells the critics that no, there will not be a lot of use of military, because as people get used to this federal system and realize that the federal government is working to better their lives, they'll be closer to it and will have a better positive look and attitude towards it. Another thing that he mentions, he says, if there is ever a sedition, an uprising, an insurrection in one state, the fact that the Union can come up with a bigger force to put it down, bigger military force, this will force the people who might be thinking about rising up or sedition or insurrection, might think about it again, because they know a big force will be coming to put them down. Let me read the text to you. It has been urged in different shapes that a constitution of the kind proposed by the convention cannot operate without the aid of a military force to execute its laws. This, however, like most other things that have been alleged on that side, rests on mere general assertion, unsupported by any precise or intelligible designation of the reason upon which it is founded. As far as I have been able to divine the latent meaning of the objectors, it seems to originate in a presupposition that the people will be disinclined to the exercise of federal authority in any matter of an internal nature, waiving any exception that might be taken to the inaccuracy or inexplicitness of the distinction between internal and external. Let us inquire what ground there is to presuppose that disinclination in the people, unless we presume at the same time that the powers of the general government will be worse administered than those of the state governments. There seems to be no room for the presumption of ill will, disaffection, or opposition in the people. I believe it may be laid down as a general rule that their confidence in and obedience to a government will commonly be proportioned to the goodness or badness of its administration. It must be admitted that there are exceptions to this rule, but these exceptions depend so entirely on accidental causes that they cannot be considered as having any relation to the intrinsic merits or demerits of a constitution. These can only be judged of by general principles and maxims. So he said these critics of all they're doing is criticizing us, but without any foundation. They are not giving a chance for this federal government to work and for people to see what a good job it does for them. So all their criticism is just based on their imagination. Then he'll continue in the second paragraph. Various reasons have been suggested in the course of these papers to induce a probability that the general government will be better administered than the particular government. Remember, general government is the federal government, particular government is the state government. The principle of which are that the extension of the spheres of election will present a greater option or latitude of choice to the people, that through the medium of the state legislatures, who are select bodies of men and who are to appoint the members of the National Senate, there is reason to expect that this branch will generally be composed with peculiar care and judgment. Just keep in mind that until early 20th century, state legislatures elected the senators. So states, this way they could say they would show their sovereignty this way. It was only after the beginning of the 20th century that people directly elected the senators. So here he says that you all, through your state legislatures, elect the senators and have a lot to say in the federal government. So don't feel like the federal government is going to be against you, because you will directly or indirectly elect the members of the federal government that serve you. Okay, I'll start reading again. That these circumstances promise greater knowledge and more comprehensive information in the national councils, and that on account of extent of the country from which those to whose direction they will be committed will be drawn, they will be less apt to be tainted by the spirit of faction and more out of the reach of those occasional ill humors or temporary prejudices and propensities which in smaller societies frequently contaminate the public deliberation, be it injustice and oppression of a part of the community, and engender schemes which, though they gratify a momentary inclination or desire, terminate in general distress, dissatisfaction, and disgust. He says if the district that a person, representative, gets elected is small, they might be tainted with maybe, let's say, in a district, 51% of people are totally wrong about something, but they manage to say we are the majority. And if a district is small enough, sometimes because of cohesion and certain things, this could easily happen. So he says we have got the federal districts to be large areas where people who get elected from it will not be tainted with this close-mindedness or with this radicalism or with things that they will just decide out of passion without reflection, and they do not think of the long-term damage that it will do. He says in the federal system, in this new way that we have decided one can elect the representatives to the Congress, this thing would most likely not happen. You won't have a small group of people ruining everything for the rest of the people. Because the writers of the Federalist Papers, they were really realistic, very realistic about human nature. And they would say that majority of people are good, yes, but a lot of times when passions take over, then they'll do foolish things. And at the same time, because of the realistic view of human nature, they said we want to frame this government, we want to make this government in a way that power, because power corrupts people, even good people, says we're going to make it in a way with checks and balances and separation of powers, judicial independence, and also elections at particular times. We will make sure that in case somebody bad comes to power, they will not damage the whole system. You can throw them out of office before they do a lot of damage. In the meanwhile, the checks and balances and separations of powers keeps the whole system going without totally bringing it to a stop and breaking it apart.